In the vast, endless void of space, signals travel unseen, waves of energy drifting across the cosmos, carrying the echoes of the universe's past, present, and future. Some signals are easily explained, originating from pulsars, quasars, or the electromagnetic radiation of distant stars. Others, however, defy explanation. These are the phantom signals, strange bursts of energy that appear suddenly without warning, and then vanish just as quickly, leaving behind only questions. For decades, scientists, astronomers, and even intelligence agencies have intercepted signals from deep space that seem to suggest something beyond our understanding. Some of these transmissions appear to follow no natural pattern, emitting rapid bursts of radio waves or perfectly timed pulses, almost as if someone or something was attempting to communicate. Others resemble coded messages, detected once and never heard again. Could these signals be evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence? Or are they natural cosmic phenomena that simply appear unnatural to our limited understanding? One of the most famous cases of an unexplained space signal occurred in 1977, when a radio telescope in Ohio detected a powerful burst of radio energy from deep space, lasting just 72 seconds. The astronomer who discovered it circled the reading on the printout and scribbled a single word in the margin: "Wow." More than 4 decades later, the "wow" signal remains one of the most compelling and mysterious detections of a potential alien transmission ever recorded. But this was not the first, nor the last, of such enigmatic signals. Throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, other signals have puzzled scientists and researchers. In the late 1800s, famed inventor Nikola Tesla claimed he had received a mysterious, repetitive transmission from space, one that he believed to be from extraterrestrial intelligence. Nearly a century later, in the early 2000s, the SETI project, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, detected another bizarre frequency, known as SHGB 02+14a, which lacked any known natural explanation. And most recently, fast radio bursts, FRBs, sudden millisecond-long pulses of high-energy radio waves, have been detected from deep space, some even repeating in strange, predictable cycles. Scientists are still debating whether these bursts come from magnetars, distant supernovae, or perhaps something else entirely. But if an advanced alien civilization were trying to communicate, how would we even know? Would we recognize their message? Or could these phantom signals already be reaching us, only to be ignored or misunderstood, because they don't fit our expectations of what an extraterrestrial message should be? This episode of The Forgotten Frontiers dives deep into some of the strangest signals ever received from the cosmos. We'll explore the WOW signal, one of the most tantalizing pieces of evidence for possible alien contact, and the phenomenon of fast radio bursts, the unexplained deep space pulses that continue to baffle scientists. We'll examine what these signals could mean, whether they are cosmic accidents, hidden communications, or a message waiting for us to decipher. The universe is filled with signals, but not all of them are meant to be heard. On August 15, 1977, a radio telescope in Delaware, Ohio, picked up a 72-second burst of radio waves from deep space that was so unusual, so inexplicable, that the astronomer who discovered it could only react with a single word: wow. The event occurred at Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Telescope, part of a long-running Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence SETI project. The telescope was scanning the sky in the 1420 MHz radio frequency, a special wavelength that is naturally emitted by hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. Astronomers considered this an ideal frequency for interstellar communication, believing that any intelligent civilization trying to make contact would likely use this universal reference point. At 10:16 p.m., the telescope registered an abrupt spike in signal strength, a transmission 30 times stronger than background noise. It came in loud and clear, with an unmistakable rise and fall, just like a deliberate broadcast, rather than random cosmic noise. The signal lasted for exactly 72 seconds, the length of time the telescope could focus on a single point in the sky before Earth's rotation moved it out of range. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. Days later, Dr. Jerry Amon, a volunteer astronomer reviewing the telescope's printout, spotted the anomaly. The signal stood out so dramatically from the usual noise that he circled it in red pen and wrote, "Wow," in the margin, a reaction that would immortalize the event. The signal's characteristics were perplexing. It came from deep space, in the direction of the Sagittarius constellation. It had a precise frequency, 1420.456 MHz, that suggested it wasn't random noise. It was incredibly strong but didn't repeat, making it difficult to confirm or analyze further. This was exactly the type of signal SETI had been searching for. A narrow band, high-intensity burst from space, with no known natural explanation. But frustratingly, despite repeated scans of the same region of space, the signal was never detected again. The WOW. Signal's exact origin remains a mystery because Big Ear used a two-feed horn system, meaning it should have picked up the signal twice, about 3 minutes apart. However, only one feed registered it, making pinpointing the source even harder. There were no known planets, stars, or galaxies in the precise area from which the signal originated. While it came from the Sagittarius constellation, it was from a seemingly empty region of space. Several scientific and speculative theories have been proposed over the years. One of the most exciting possibilities is that the WOW signal was an intentional broadcast from an advanced alien species. The fact that it was so strong, so clear, and so precisely on the hydrogen line suggests intelligence rather than natural phenomena. If another civilization was trying to make contact, they might use a powerful radio beacon to send out periodic pulses of energy. However, if the signal was only sent once every few decades or centuries, we might simply have been lucky to catch it. Some researchers have speculated that the signal could have been a reflected transmission from Earth, a stray signal bouncing off a satellite or asteroid. However, the exact frequency and power of the signal make this unlikely. Additionally, radio telescopes operate in protected frequency ranges, meaning Earth-based signals shouldn't interfere. Could the WOW signal have been a rare cosmic phenomenon? Some scientists have suggested it could have been a powerful burst from a pulsar, though no known pulsars emit at this precise frequency, an undiscovered type of astronomical event, or a sudden cosmic ray burst interfering with the telescope's instruments. But in over 40 years of observation, nothing quite like it has ever been detected again. In 2017, a study suggested that the WOW signal might have been caused by a hydrogen cloud surrounding a passing comet. However, this theory was widely disputed because comets don't typically emit strong, narrow-band radio signals. No known comet was in the exact position of the signal at the time. If comets produced signals like this, we should have detected many more of them. This explanation was dismissed by most SETI researchers, who still consider the signal unexplained. Despite extensive follow-up searches, no repeat of the WOW signal has ever been found. Astronomers have repeatedly scanned the same region of space using modern, more powerful telescopes, but nothing like it has ever been heard again. The lack of a second detection makes it nearly impossible to verify its true origin. If the WOW signal was a real message from an extraterrestrial civilization, we may have intercepted just one fleeting moment of a broadcast that will never be repeated in our lifetime. But what if we simply weren't meant to hear it? Some scientists argue that alien civilizations may communicate in ways we don't yet understand, perhaps using quantum signals, neutrino bursts, or laser pulses instead of radio waves. If the WOW signal was truly an extraterrestrial message, it's possible that we accidentally intercepted a signal meant for someone else, a broadcast aimed at another world, another civilization, somewhere far beyond our reach. More than 4 decades after its discovery, the WOW signal remains one of the greatest space mysteries of all time. Was it a technical glitch, a cosmic accident, or a deliberate transmission from an unknown intelligence? The truth may never be known, but one thing is certain: the wow signal changed the way we search for life beyond Earth. It remains a symbol of scientific curiosity, the quest for extraterrestrial intelligence, and the possibility that we are not alone in the universe. While the wow signal may never be explained, scientists today are detecting new, unexplained signals from deep space. Unlike the wow signal, these signals repeat, appear in strange patterns, and come from billions of light years away. Could fast radio bursts, FRBs, be the next big clue in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence? For years, the wow signal stood as one of the greatest mysteries in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. But as technology improved and more powerful radio telescopes were built, astronomers began detecting something even more bizarre: brief, powerful bursts of radio waves originating from deep space. Unlike the wow signal, which was a singular event, these signals repeated, appeared in strange patterns, and were coming from billions of light years away. These events became known as fast radio bursts, or FRBS. The first was detected in 2007 by Duncan Lorimer and his student, David Narkovich, while reviewing archival data from the Parkes Radio Telescope in Australia. The burst lasted only milliseconds, but the energy it released was equivalent to hundreds of millions of suns. Even more astonishing was the fact that, despite its intensity, the signal had traveled billions of years before reaching Earth. This meant that whatever produced it had to be an extraordinarily powerful cosmic event. Initially, scientists assumed FRBs were rare, one-time occurrences similar to gamma-ray bursts or neutron star collisions. But in the years that followed, more were detected, some even repeating in regular patterns. One of the most famous examples is FRB 121102, a repeating burst that originates from a dwarf galaxy more than 3 billion light-years away. Unlike other FRBs, which seem to flash and vanish forever, FRB 121102 returned again and again, following an unpredictable pattern. This was a game-changer, as it suggested that the source could not be a cataclysmic event like a supernova, which would only occur once. Instead, it had to be something persistent. As more FRBs were discovered, astronomers noticed something even more unusual. Some of them followed a regular cycle. FRB 180916.0158 plus 65, for example, repeats every 16.35 days, with a 4-day window of activity followed by 12 days of silence. This pattern raised immediate questions. What kind of astronomical object could emit such powerful energy bursts with this level of precision? Some researchers speculated that highly magnetized neutron stars, known as magnetars, could be responsible. Magnetars are known to produce extremely intense bursts of radiation, and under the right conditions, they could generate FRBS. But this theory did not fully explain the repeating cycles or the sheer power behind some of the bursts. Another theory suggested that FRBs could be created by interactions between neutron stars and black holes. If a neutron star was orbiting a black hole, its magnetic field could periodically get twisted and realigned, releasing sudden bursts of radio waves. This could explain the periodic nature of some FRBs, but it still didn't account for others that appeared completely random. This is where things take a more speculative turn. Some scientists, including Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, have proposed that FRBs might not be natural at all, but rather the result of advanced extraterrestrial technology. One possibility is that FRBs are leakage from incredibly powerful alien transmitters, perhaps used for interstellar communication. Another is that they could be a form of propulsion, massive beams of energy used to push spacecraft across vast cosmic distances. If an advanced civilization were using directed energy to propel ships, similar to how we have experimented with solar sails, FRBs might simply be an accidental byproduct of that process. Skeptics argue that these ideas stretch the limits of plausibility. However, they acknowledge that FRBs remain one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in modern astronomy. Unlike the WOW signal, which never repeated, FRBs continue to be detected, with more than 1,000 identified so far. Some flash once and disappear forever, while others pulse with eerie precision. Some come from nearby galaxies, while others originate from the most distant reaches of the observable universe. The biggest challenge in solving the FRB mystery is the difficulty in pinpointing their exact locations. While astronomers have been able to trace a handful of them back to specific galaxies, most remain frustratingly vague, emerging from empty regions of space with no apparent source. This raises another possibility. Could FRBs be coming from intergalactic space, not from galaxies at all? If so, this would mean that whatever is producing them exists outside of traditional star systems, something we have yet to understand. Despite the uncertainty, FRBs have already revolutionized how we study the universe. Some researchers believe that if we can decipher their origins, we may be able to use them to map cosmic structures, measure the distribution of matter in the universe, and even test the limits of fundamental physics. But for now, FRBs remain one of the strangest and most compelling mysteries of the cosmos. If an advanced civilization were trying to communicate across the stars, FRBs might be exactly the kind of signal they would use: brief, powerful bursts that could travel across billions of light years without losing strength. But if they are indeed messages, the question remains, were they meant for us? Next, we explore another unexplained signal from the past, one that was recorded not by modern radio telescopes, but by the most unlikely recipient imaginable: Nikola Tesla. At the turn of the 20th century, long before the search for extraterrestrial intelligence formally began, one of history's most brilliant minds claimed to have detected something extraordinary. In 1899, while conducting experiments on wireless electricity in his laboratory in Colorado Springs, Nikola Tesla reported receiving a mysterious signal from space, one that he believed to be an attempt at extraterrestrial communication. Tesla had been studying the transmission of electrical energy through the atmosphere using his high-voltage equipment, including a massive coil that generated powerful radio waves. One evening, as he monitored his instruments, he detected a repeating radio signal unlike anything he had encountered before. The pulses, he claimed, were deliberate and structured, resembling some form of mathematical sequence rather than random noise. He was so convinced of their unnatural origin that he later wrote, "I have a deep conviction that I have been the first to hear the greeting of one planet to another." The scientific community at the time dismissed Tesla's claim, attributing the signals to atmospheric interference, equipment malfunctions, or even his own overactive imagination. After all, radio astronomy did not yet exist, and the idea of detecting signals from deep space was unthinkable in 1899. But as time passed and new discoveries were made, some began to reconsider the possibility that Tesla may have accidentally intercepted one of the earliest known space signals. One of the most plausible explanations is that Tesla may have unknowingly detected a pulsar, a type of rapidly rotating neutron star that emits regular, precise pulses of radio waves. Pulsars were not officially discovered until 1967, when astrophysicist Jocelyn Bell Burnell detected them while studying radio signals at Cambridge. The periodic nature of pulsar emissions could explain why Tesla believed he was picking up a structured, repeating signal. However, there is a problem with this theory. Pulsars emit their signals at frequencies that would have been well beyond the range of Tesla's equipment, making it highly unlikely that he could have detected one. This has led to speculation that Tesla may have picked up something else entirely, perhaps an artificial signal of unknown origin. One intriguing possibility is that Tesla may have intercepted a transmission from Mars. At the time, many astronomers, including Tesla's contemporary Percival Lowell, were fascinated by the idea that Mars harbored intelligent life. Lowell had famously claimed to have observed vast canal-like structures on the Martian surface, leading to widespread speculation that an advanced civilization might exist on the Red Planet. If intelligent life had once thrived on Mars, could they have attempted to reach out? Modern astronomers remain skeptical of this idea, given that no artificial signals have ever been detected coming from Mars in the decades of radio astronomy that followed. But Tesla's claim remains one of the earliest recorded instances of someone interpreting an unexplained radio signal as a possible message from beyond Earth. A more recent unexplained signal, one that bears eerie similarities to Tesla's account, was discovered in 2003 by researchers working on the SETI at Home project. The signal, labeled SHGB02 plus 14A, was an unusual narrowband radio transmission detected at 1420 MHz, the same hydrogen frequency that astronomers consider a prime candidate for interstellar communication. Unlike Tesla's signal, this one was detected with modern radio technology, yet it too had no clear point of origin. What made SHGB02 plus 14 even more mysterious was the fact that it was detected not once, but 3 separate times, always in the same region of the sky. There were no known planets, stars, or galaxies in that precise location, making it difficult to explain as a natural phenomenon. The signal was weak but persistent, and it shared characteristics with artificial transmissions. Was this the work of an advanced civilization trying to reach out, or was it merely an unknown cosmic anomaly? Despite extensive follow-up scans, the signal was never detected again, making it yet another fleeting mystery, much like the WOW signal decades earlier. The search for extraterrestrial signals has come a long way since Tesla's time, but the core question remains the same. If intelligent life beyond Earth is sending out messages, are we capable of recognizing them? More importantly, if we are receiving signals, how do we know they were meant for us? Next, we explore a final possibility. What if intelligent civilizations are not using radio signals at all? Could we be listening in the wrong way, while the real messages are traveling by means we cannot yet detect? If an advanced civilization were trying to communicate, how would they send a message? For decades, scientists have assumed that radio waves would be the preferred method, simply because they can travel vast distances through space without losing much strength. But what if this assumption is wrong? What if extraterrestrial civilizations are using a form of communication that we haven't even considered, or one that we simply don't have the technology to detect? The problem with radio waves is that they require a sender and a receiver who are both using the same technology and the same frequency range at the same time. Given the vastness of the universe and the differences in technological development between civilizations, this seems like an unlikely scenario. If aliens were trying to communicate, it is more probable that they would use a more efficient and universal method, one that doesn't rely on the limitations of radio transmissions. One possibility is that advanced civilizations might use laser-based communication, also known as optical SETI. Instead of sending radio waves, they might send powerful bursts of laser light across the cosmos. These signals could carry vast amounts of data and travel across immense distances with little interference. Some astronomers have even proposed that certain unexplained flashes of light seen in space could be alien laser transmissions, though no confirmed evidence has been found so far. Another theory suggests that extraterrestrial civilizations might use neutrino-based communication. Neutrinos are nearly massless particles that can pass through almost anything, including entire planets, without being absorbed or scattered. This would make them an ideal means of communication, allowing messages to be transmitted across the universe without being blocked by dust, gas, or cosmic radiation. The problem is that neutrinos are incredibly difficult to detect. Our current technology is capable of capturing only a tiny fraction of them, meaning that even if an alien civilization were sending messages in this way, we would likely miss them entirely. Some scientists believe that quantum communication could be the ultimate method used by advanced civilizations. Quantum entanglement allows two particles to be instantaneously linked, no matter how far apart they are. In theory, this could enable real-time communication across vast cosmic distances without any delay. However, While we are beginning to experiment with quantum communication on Earth, we are nowhere near understanding how it could be scaled for interstellar messaging. If aliens are using quantum signals, we may not even know where to begin looking for them. Another issue is that we may be receiving signals that are being distorted by the vast cosmic environment they must travel through. Over billions of light years, radio signals could be scattered, stretched, or absorbed by cosmic dust and gas, making them nearly impossible to recognize by the time they reach us. What if some of the unexplained background noise we detect in the universe is actually the remains of ancient alien messages, degraded beyond recognition? A more unsettling possibility is that advanced civilizations are deliberately avoiding communication. In recent years, some scientists, including Stephen Hawking, have warned that actively trying to contact extraterrestrial life could be dangerous. Hawking compared it to when indigenous civilizations on Earth encountered technologically superior ones, often with disastrous consequences. If some intelligent species out there know we exist, they may have already decided to remain silent, watching us from afar rather than making contact. Then there is the question of whether we have already received a message, one that we simply didn't recognize as such. What if the WOW signal, or one of the many unexplained radio bursts we've detected, was an actual transmission from another civilization, but we lacked the context to understand its meaning? A message in an unknown language, or one encoded in a way beyond our comprehension, could easily be mistaken for background noise. The idea that alien civilizations are using communication methods beyond our understanding is not science fiction. It is a very real and frustrating limitation of our technology. Until we develop new ways of detecting and interpreting signals, we may continue to miss what could be the greatest discovery in human history. The universe is a vast and silent place, but perhaps it is only silent to us. If someone somewhere is trying to speak, are we even listening in the right way? Next, we conclude this exploration by reflecting on the most compelling signals we've detected and what they may mean for the search for intelligent life beyond Earth. For decades, astronomers have searched the sky, listening for a signal, some undeniable proof that we are not alone in the universe. The WOW signal remains one of the most tantalizing clues, a fleeting burst of radio waves that may have been the first and only whisper from an unknown intelligence. Fast radio bursts continue to puzzle scientists, appearing and disappearing in ways that challenge our understanding of the cosmos. Tesla's mysterious signal from 1899, dismissed in his time, now seems eerily similar to what modern radio telescopes struggle to explain. Each of these signals shares a common trait. They are singular, unexplained anomalies. None have provided the repeatability or consistency that science demands for definitive proof. Yet their existence alone suggests that something is out there, waiting to be understood. Whether these signals are natural cosmic phenomena, remnants of long-dead civilizations, or ongoing attempts at communication, remains uncertain. The problem is not only with detection, but with interpretation. What if the message has already been received, but we simply don't know how to read it? A civilization far more advanced than our own may not use radio waves at all. They could be speaking in the language of neutrinos, quantum entanglement, or a method beyond human comprehension. If this is the case, then the real question is not whether the universe is silent, but whether we are deaf to its voice. There is also the unsettling possibility that some civilizations choose to remain silent. The universe is old, far older than humanity, and if intelligent species exist, some may have already learned that broadcasting their existence carries risks. Stephen Hawking once warned that actively reaching out to alien civilizations could be as dangerous as shouting in the jungle, unaware of what may be listening. Could it be that we are surrounded by intelligent life, but none of them are willing to make the first move? For now, all we can do is continue to listen. New telescopes and technologies will expand our ability to scan the skies, capturing signals with greater precision than ever before. And perhaps one day, a transmission will come through, one that repeats, one that confirms what many have long suspected. Until then, we are left with whispers in the dark, fleeting signals from the unknown, and the greatest question of all. If someone is calling, will we ever be able to answer? The signals we've detected may be whispers from the void, echoes of the unknown, or something trying to reach us, but without a key, the message remains locked in static. But strange signals are not the only mysteries that defy explanation. In 1946, hundreds of unidentified craft appeared over Scandinavia, missile-like objects with no known origin. Some were seen crashing into lakes, yet no wreckage was ever found. Were they secret weapons, or something far more mysterious? This is the ghost rocket phenomenon. In the summer of 1946, just as the world was beginning to recover from the devastation of World War II, an unsettling new mystery appeared in the skies over Europe. Reports flooded in from civilians, pilots, and military personnel, describing strange, unidentified objects streaking across the atmosphere, missile-like craft that moved silently, sometimes erratically, before vanishing from sight. These objects, later dubbed ghost rockets, were seen by thousands, tracked on radar, and even reported crashing into lakes. Yet, despite numerous investigations, no wreckage was ever recovered, and no country claimed responsibility. At the time, global tensions were rising as the Cold War took shape. Governments were on high alert, fearing new and advanced weapons from the Soviet Union or leftover experimental German technology from the war. Initially, many assumed these ghost rockets were secret Soviet missile tests, possibly utilizing captured Nazi V-2 rocket scientists and technology. But this explanation quickly unraveled. The objects did not behave like standard missiles. They exhibited unusual flight patterns, lacked visible propulsion, and sometimes maneuvered in ways that defied conventional aerodynamics. More disturbing were the reports of ghost rockets crashing into lakes. Swedish military authorities investigated multiple impact sites, believing they would find debris from an experimental weapon. But after extensive diving missions and recovery efforts, they found nothing. How could a solid object crash into a lake, yet leave no trace behind? The mystery deepened, and soon, the Swedish government found itself struggling to explain what was happening over its airspace. By the end of 1946, over 1,000 reports of ghost rockets had been officially logged, with some incidents being backed by military radar data. The Swedish Air Force, British intelligence, and even the newly established US intelligence agencies became involved, trying to determine the source of these objects. Were they foreign weapons, unknown atmospheric phenomena, or something even stranger? Adding to the mystery was the sheer scale and consistency of the sightings. These weren't isolated incidents, nor the accounts of a few overactive imaginations. The ghost rockets were seen in multiple countries over many months by trained military observers, commercial pilots, and civilians alike. The phenomenon was not limited to a single location, making it unlikely to be a misidentified local experiment. The Swedish government, unable to provide concrete answers, eventually classified many of its findings, banning further public discussion of ghost rocket sightings to prevent panic. The official explanation was vague, suggesting possible meteor activity, misidentifications, or secret weapons testing by an unknown power. But none of these explanations fully accounted for the bizarre details of the reports, especially those describing objects making controlled maneuvers before disappearing into lakes without a trace. The ghost rocket phenomenon remains one of the most well-documented yet unresolved aerial mysteries of the 20th century. Unlike later UFO sightings, these objects were seen in broad daylight, observed over an extended period, and often corroborated by military tracking equipment. They were real, physical, and yet inexplicably elusive. What were these objects? Were they advanced but undisclosed military technology? A natural phenomenon never before seen? Or could they have been something entirely beyond human understanding? This episode of The Forgotten Frontiers explores the ghost rocket phenomenon, beginning with the first reports in early 1946 and following the Swedish military's desperate attempts to uncover the truth. From first-hand witness accounts to classified government investigations, we dive into one of the most perplexing unsolved cases in the history of aviation and aerospace phenomena. If these objects were missiles, they were unlike any the world had seen. If they were something else, then the mystery of the ghost rockets is even bigger than we ever imagined. The first reports of the ghost rockets began in early 1946, months before the phenomenon reached its peak in the summer. At first, the sightings were sparse. Strange missile-like objects seen streaking across the sky, sometimes reported as moving in unnatural ways. Most of these early accounts came from Sweden and Finland, where civilians and military personnel alike observed the unidentified aerial objects. As the months went on, the reports grew more frequent, more detailed, and more concerning. By June, the Swedish government was receiving an increasing number of official reports. Many described long, cylindrical objects, resembling rockets or torpedoes, moving silently at high speeds. Some were said to leave behind faint trails of smoke or vapor, while others appeared completely smooth, lacking any visible means of propulsion. Unlike the conventional missiles of the time, these objects did not follow the expected ballistic trajectories. Instead, they often changed direction mid-flight, made erratic maneuvers, or disappeared at impossible angles. The Swedish military initially suspected that these sightings were related to leftover German V-2 rockets, possibly launched from Soviet-controlled territories as part of secret tests. However, there were inconsistencies with this explanation. The ghost rockets were not behaving like V-2 missiles. They did not explode upon impact, nor did they display the intense sound and shockwaves associated with traditional rocket propulsion. Furthermore, the V-2 was a well-known design by this point. If the Soviets were launching them over Sweden, their flight characteristics would have been far more predictable. Witness reports from across Scandinavia told of objects traveling silently, sometimes at very low altitudes. Pilots flying in Swedish airspace began reporting strange encounters as well. Some claimed to have seen long, dark objects pass directly beneath their aircraft, moving too fast to be identified. Others reported sightings of unknown craft maneuvering in ways that no known aircraft or missile could. On July 9th, a Swedish Air Force pilot flying near the city of Östersund spotted what he described as a metallic object, shaped like a torpedo, flying at high speed across the sky. He attempted to pursue it, but within seconds it had vanished from sight. This was one of the first documented cases of a military attempt to track a ghost rocket, and it would not be the last. The Swedish Air Force was becoming increasingly alarmed. Whatever these objects were, they were appearing with greater frequency, and no one knew where they were coming from. By late July, reports surged. The objects were now being seen over Norway, Denmark, and even as far as Greece. In some cases, entire groups of witnesses watched as the ghost rockets traveled overhead in broad daylight. One of the most remarkable sightings occurred on July 19th, when more than 200 people in Stockholm witnessed an object flying low over the city before vanishing into the sky. That same day, multiple reports from Sweden's west coast described another rocket-like object moving erratically before plunging into the sea. Throughout August and September, the phenomenon showed no signs of slowing down. The Swedish military scrambled aircraft to intercept the objects whenever radar picked them up, but no pilot ever managed to get close enough for a definitive identification. It seemed as though the ghost rockets either disappeared or outran their pursuers every time. This raised another troubling question. Were these objects under intelligent control? The idea that these were nothing more than meteors or atmospheric anomalies was quickly losing credibility. Meteors do not change direction. They do not travel at slow speeds, hover, or crash into lakes without leaving debris. And yet, these objects were doing just that. The situation reached a breaking point when Swedish authorities began receiving reports of ghost rockets actually impacting bodies of water. Witnesses described objects plunging into lakes, sending up waves and disturbances. But when investigators searched the crash sites, there was nothing there. No wreckage, no fragments, nothing. It was as if the objects had simply vanished upon impact. As the reports continued to pile up, the Swedish government found itself under increasing pressure to provide answers. The problem was that there were no answers. The ghost rockets remained unidentified, their origins unknown, and their purpose unclear. All the military could do was investigate further. By the fall of 1946, it was clear that this was no isolated phenomenon. The ghost rockets had been seen by thousands of people, including experienced pilots, military officers, and radar operators. Something real was in the skies over Sweden and its neighboring countries, but no one could say what it was. The only thing Swedish authorities knew for certain was that these objects were defying conventional explanation. The military's next move would be to launch an intensive investigation into the reported lake crashes, hoping that physical evidence would finally provide the answers they were seeking. What they found only deepened the mystery. Swedish military authorities wasted no time in launching full-scale investigations into the reported ghost rocket crashes. With multiple eyewitness accounts describing objects diving into lakes, the expectation was that tangible evidence would finally be recovered. If these objects were missiles, their remains would be found at the bottom of the lakes. If they were advanced aircraft, there might be fragments of metal, propulsion systems, or even identifiable serial numbers that could trace them back to their origin. Yet what they found, or rather, what they didn't find, only deepened the mystery. The Swedish government dispatched teams of divers and military investigators to several lakes where ghost rockets had supposedly crashed. The first and most well-documented case occurred at Lake Kölmjärv in northern Sweden. In late July 1946, multiple witnesses saw an elongated object descend from the sky and plunge into the water. The impact caused a visible disturbance, sending up waves as if a large object had just broken the surface. Swedish authorities arrived at the scene quickly, marking the spot and beginning underwater searches. For weeks, divers scoured the lakebed, searching for any trace of debris. The water was clear, the search area was well defined, and yet nothing was recovered. No missile fragments, no aircraft wreckage, no impact crater at the bottom, just undisturbed lake sediment. It was as if the object had simply disappeared upon impact. This pattern repeated itself at other lakes. Eyewitnesses consistently reported seeing ghost rockets diving into bodies of water, yet every attempt to retrieve physical evidence ended in failure. In some cases, divers noted odd disturbances on the lakebed, but no solid remains. This led to increasing speculation. Could the objects have been designed to dissolve upon impact? Were they composed of unknown materials that disintegrated underwater? Or, more bizarrely, could they have continued moving beneath the surface? The reports of ghost rockets crashing into lakes became so frequent that Swedish authorities began considering the possibility that these objects were not crashing at all, but instead deliberately entering the water. The idea that they could be some kind of submersible craft, capable of both flight and underwater travel, began gaining traction within certain investigative circles. Some witnesses had even described the objects slowing down before hitting the water, an observation inconsistent with missiles or meteors, but suggestive of controlled descent. The Swedish military, now working with British and American intelligence agencies, intensified its investigations. By the end of 1946, nearly 200 reports of water impacts had been logged, yet not a single piece of material evidence had been found. The lack of physical proof led some skeptics to dismiss the phenomenon entirely, suggesting that these were simply exaggerated accounts of meteor falls. But those who had actually seen the objects, pilots, military officers, and trained radar operators, knew otherwise. Adding to the strangeness of the situation was the Swedish government's reaction. After months of extensive but fruitless searches, officials suddenly classified much of their investigation, restricting public discussion of the ghost rockets. Newspapers, which had been covering the story in great detail throughout the summer, were discouraged from reporting further on new sightings. Witnesses who had been freely coming forward were now hesitant, afraid of scrutiny from authorities. This secrecy only fueled speculation. Some believed the Swedish government had, in fact, found something but was keeping it hidden. Others thought Sweden had come under political pressure from foreign governments, perhaps the United States or the Soviet Union, to suppress information. If the ghost rockets were indeed part of a classified weapons program, the last thing any world power wanted was for details to become public. Yet despite the classified reports and official silence, the ghost rocket phenomenon did not fade away. Even as official investigations slowed down, sightings continued, albeit less frequently. By early 1947, the wave of ghost rocket reports had mostly subsided, but the questions remained. If these were experimental Soviet missiles, why had there been no further test flights? If they were natural phenomena, why had they disappeared as suddenly as they had arrived? The failure to retrieve any solid evidence meant that, as far as official records were concerned, the case was left unresolved. But for those who had witnessed the events firsthand, there was no doubt. The ghost rockets were real. And what's more, they were unlike anything known to conventional science or military technology at the time. Sweden's lakes may still hold the answers. The objects that reportedly crashed may remain buried beneath layers of silt and sediment, waiting to be uncovered. Or, if the more unusual theories are to be believed, they may have simply moved on, leaving no trace of their presence except the memories of those who saw them. Whatever the truth may be, the ghost rocket investigations marked one of the earliest and most well-documented cases of widespread, unidentified aerial phenomena. Unlike many UFO reports that would follow in the coming decades, these sightings were extensively recorded, investigated at the highest levels, and taken seriously by multiple governments. But despite all efforts, the mystery of the ghost rockets was never solved. What were they? Could they have been secret Soviet technology, a natural phenomenon never before recorded, or something entirely beyond human understanding? With no definitive answers, investigators turned to breaking down possible explanations, trying to determine what, if anything, could account for the strange objects seen in the skies over Scandinavia in 1946. What they found only raised more questions. With no physical evidence recovered from the lakes and no official explanation from Swedish authorities, investigators were left to consider what could possibly account for the ghost rocket phenomenon. While skeptics dismissed the sightings as nothing more than misidentified meteors or atmospheric anomalies, those who had witnessed the objects firsthand, military officials, commercial pilots, and civilian observers, knew what they had seen was something else entirely. The ghost rockets behaved in ways that did not match conventional missiles, aircraft, or natural celestial events. One of the most widely accepted theories at the time was that the ghost rockets were part of a secret Soviet weapons program. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, both the United States and the Soviet Union were racing to acquire as much German military technology as possible. The Soviets in particular had seized large numbers of V-2 rockets and recruited many of Germany's top aerospace engineers. It was not unthinkable that they had begun testing an early version of a cruise missile, possibly a prototype of what would later become the Soviet R-1 rocket. However, there were several problems with this theory. First, the flight characteristics of the ghost rockets did not match those of any known missile. Unlike the V-2, which followed a predictable arc before crashing to the ground, the ghost rockets were seen making deliberate, controlled maneuvers. Some were even reported hovering before changing direction. The V-2 and its descendants had no such capability. Second, if these were Soviet tests, why were they being conducted over neutral Sweden? Launching missiles into the airspace of another country, especially one not aligned with the Soviet Union, would have been an extremely risky move. If the tests were meant to be secret, It made little sense to conduct them in broad daylight, where they would be observed by thousands of people. And if these were tests of Soviet technology, why was there no wreckage? Even experimental rockets leave behind fragments. Another explanation put forward by skeptics was that the ghost rockets were simply meteors or natural atmospheric phenomena. This was the official stance taken by some authorities in Sweden, who suggested that many of the sightings could be attributed to an unusually intense meteor shower. At first glance, this seemed like a reasonable explanation. After all, meteors often appear as streaks of light moving quickly through the sky, and 1946 did see an increase in meteor activity. But this theory failed to explain key aspects of the sightings. Meteors do not change direction. They do not slow down or hover. They do not move at low altitudes, nor do they leave vapor trails or emit metallic reflections in daylight. Most importantly, they do not crash into lakes and leave visible disturbances on the water's surface. Even if some reports could be attributed to meteor activity, the most detailed accounts, those backed by radar tracking, clearly described physical objects moving with intent. As the official investigation stalled, some researchers began to consider a more controversial possibility. Were the ghost rockets extraterrestrial in origin? The idea that the objects could have been advanced aircraft from another civilization seemed extreme, but it was not without precedent. The ghost rocket wave of 1946 occurred less than a year before the infamous UFO sightings that would sweep across the United States, culminating in the Roswell incident of 1947. Many researchers have pointed out the eerie similarities between the two events. Both involved unidentified aerial objects, both were extensively documented by governments, and both resulted in classified investigations with no clear answers. The ghost rockets, however, were different in one crucial way. Unlike later UFO sightings, which often described saucer-shaped craft or lights in the sky, the ghost rockets appeared mechanical, more like drones or missiles than traditional flying saucers. This has led to speculation that if they were not human technology, they may have been unmanned probes sent for reconnaissance purposes. There is also the theory that the ghost rockets were capable of more than just flight. Some researchers believe they may have been a form of transmedium craft, meaning they could operate both in the air and underwater. This would explain why so many were seen crashing into lakes but never recovered. If these objects were designed to continue traveling beneath the surface, they may have simply moved out of range before search teams could locate them. While there is no definitive evidence to support the extraterrestrial hypothesis, it remains one of the few explanations that accounts for all aspects of the ghost rocket phenomenon: their ability to move without visible propulsion, their sudden appearances and disappearances, and their seeming lack of physical wreckage. Ultimately, none of the official explanations, Soviet missiles, meteors, or experimental aircraft, fully account for the ghost rocket's behavior. Sweden's lakes may still hold the answers, but until a piece of physical evidence is found, the ghost rockets remain one of the greatest aerial mysteries of the modern era. Despite the best efforts of governments and researchers, no definitive conclusion was ever reached. The official stance eventually became that the ghost rockets were an unexplained but non-threatening phenomenon, a bureaucratic way of closing the case without actually solving it. But one question remains: if these objects were not of human origin, where did they come from? And more importantly, why were they here? By the fall of 1946, the ghost rocket phenomenon had reached a critical point. The Swedish government had spent months investigating, collecting reports, and dispatching teams to search for physical evidence. Yet despite their efforts, they were no closer to understanding what was flying through their skies. Pressure was mounting, both from the public and from military officials who wanted answers. With no clear explanation, Swedish authorities were forced to take a position. They would downplay the phenomenon, restrict further public discussion, and classify their findings. The decision to suppress information about the ghost rockets only fueled speculation. Why would the government shut down the investigation if there was nothing unusual about these objects? If they were simply meteors or misidentified aircraft, there would be no reason to classify reports or discourage further sightings from being shared. To many, this secrecy suggested that Swedish authorities had found something they weren't willing to disclose. One possibility is that Sweden had come under pressure from foreign governments. The ghost rockets had attracted the attention of both the United States and the United Kingdom, who were closely monitoring Soviet weapons development. If the objects were believed to be part of a secret Soviet program, revealing details publicly could have escalated tensions between East and West at a delicate time. There is evidence that both American and British intelligence agencies had been receiving detailed reports on the phenomenon, suggesting they took it seriously enough to demand information from Sweden. Another possibility is that the Swedish military had, in fact, recovered something, but rather than confirming its origin, it only deepened the mystery. A recovered fragment that did not match any known aircraft or missile technology would have posed an even bigger problem than finding nothing at all. If they had discovered material that defied explanation, what would they have done with it? A lack of answers may have been just as much a reason for secrecy as an actual cover-up. There is also the idea that Sweden wanted to avoid public panic. In 1946, memories of World War II were still fresh, and the Cold War was beginning to take shape. The last thing any government wanted was mass hysteria over the possibility that unknown aircraft were invading their airspace. By shutting down discussions and suppressing media coverage, officials could effectively control the narrative and prevent unnecessary fear. Despite the official silence, sightings continued into early 1947, though they became less frequent. The objects still appeared from time to time, but by the middle of the year, the ghost rocket wave had largely come to an end. Whatever had been in the skies over Sweden had either completed its purpose or had simply moved on. In the years that followed, interest in the ghost rockets faded. The world's attention turned elsewhere as reports of unidentified flying objects in the United States and other countries became more frequent. By the 1950s, UFO sightings had taken over as the dominant, unexplained aerial mystery, leaving the ghost rockets as little more than a historical footnote. But for those who had seen them, and for the military officials who had tried to investigate, the questions remained. If these objects were a form of undisclosed military technology, why did they disappear so suddenly? If they were meteors, why did they move in ways that defied physics? And if they were something else entirely, what were they doing over Scandinavia? Today, the ghost rocket phenomenon is one of the most well-documented yet unresolved cases in aviation history. Unlike many UFO sightings, these objects were seen by thousands of credible witnesses, tracked by military radar, and investigated at the highest levels. They were real, they were physical, and yet they remain unexplained. Perhaps one day a new discovery will shed light on what happened in Sweden in 1946. Until then, the ghost rockets remain a mystery, one that lingers over the quiet lakes and vast skies of Scandinavia, waiting for an answer that may never come. The ghost rockets of 1946 remain one of the most well-documented yet unsolved aerial mysteries in modern history. Seen by thousands, tracked on radar, and even investigated by multiple governments, these objects defied conventional explanations. No debris was ever recovered, no official source was identified, and no satisfactory answers were ever given. Were they secret Soviet weapons, unknown atmospheric phenomena, or something beyond human understanding? The Swedish government ultimately buried the case, classifying reports and discouraging further discussion. But silence does not erase the mystery. Decades later, the lakes where the ghost rockets were said to have crashed remain undisturbed, their secrets hidden beneath layers of sediment. Perhaps the truth lies there, waiting to be uncovered. Or perhaps whatever was in the skies over Scandinavia in 1946 was never meant to be found. If these objects were not of human origin, the real question is, what were they doing here? Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey through the cosmos here on Frontiers of Infinity. If this glimpse into the unknown has sparked your curiosity, be sure to subscribe and join us each Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we unravel the darkest mysteries of space.